Welcome to Tax990, your trusted platform for filing IRS Form 990 series returns quickly, accurately, and securely. In this guide, we'll walk through how to file Form 990PF using the interview-based filing method. This method is especially helpful if you prefer a guided experience where the system asks questions and builds the form for you step by step. Let's get started. At the top, you'll see your organization details, including the name, EIN, and registered address. Next, select the tax year you want to file for. In this case, we're choosing the current tax year 2025. Below that, Tax990 automatically displays the forms applicable to your organization. To proceed, click Start Filing next to Form 990PF. Next, choose how you'd like to complete your return. For this tutorial, select Start Interview Based. This method guides you through a series of simple, structured questions. It's recommended if you prefer a guided step-by-step experience, you want help organizing foundation-specific financial and compliance details, and you'd like the system to automatically generate the required sections and schedules for Form 990PF. Now confirm your organization's tax year. Most organizations operate on a calendar year, ending December 31st, but you can select a different fiscal year if applicable. Below, you'll see a list of filing conditions. These checkboxes apply to specific situations, such as filing for the first time, final return, name or address changes, pending exemption applications, and amended returns. Select any options that apply to your organization. If none apply, you can leave them unchecked. Once completed, click Next to proceed. Next, enter your organization's formation details. Start by selecting your form of organization, such as a corporation or trust. Then choose the year your organization was legally formed. You'll also need to select the state of legal domicile, which determines the governing laws for your organization. If your organization was formed outside the United States, indicate that by selecting the appropriate option. Once all details are entered, click Next to continue. In this step, you'll define your organization's classification for Form 990PF. Start by selecting the appropriate type, a 501c3 exempt private foundation, a 4947A1 non-exempt charitable trust, or another taxable private foundation. Next, indicate whether your organization is a private operating foundation or a non-operating private foundation. This distinction is important as it affects how distributions and compliance requirements are calculated. After making your selections, click Next. Now, select your organization's accounting method. Choose from cash, accrual, or other. This should match how your foundation maintains its financial records. Once selected, click Next to continue. Next, you'll review your organization's basic details. Take a moment to confirm that all information is accurate. If you need to make changes, click the Edit button next to any field. Once everything looks correct, click Next to proceed. As you proceed, Tax990 automatically performs checks to ensure your information aligns with IRS records. If any issues are detected, they'll appear in the Audit Report section. For example, you may see warnings if your organization is not found in IRS records or was entered manually. Carefully review any messages displayed. Click Review to address the issue if needed. Once you've resolved or acknowledged the alert, click Next to continue. With your organization details completed, you're now ready to move on to the course sections of Form 990PF. Below, you'll see a visual workflow outlining each section of Form 990PF. We'll focus on the key areas required for accurate filing and IRS compliance. These sections are essential as they directly impact calculations, reporting accuracy, and overall compliance. We'll also touch on the remaining sections as needed, briefly explaining their purpose and any required inputs, so you have a complete understanding of the filing process. When you're ready, click Begin to start entering your information. Before proceeding with the filing process, Tax990 organizes Form 990PF into individual sections to help simplify data entry and review. Each section represents a specific part of the return, including revenue reporting, expenses, balance sheets, qualifying distributions, excise tax calculations, compliance statements, and filing authorization details. We'll now begin the first major section of Form 990-PF, Capital Gains and Losses for Tax on Investment Income. From the filing menu, click Start next to this section to begin entering investment activity information related to gains or losses from sold assets. In this section, Tax990 asks whether your organization sold any publicly traded securities or other property that resulted in gains or losses on investment income during the tax year. Select Yes if the foundation sold investments such as stocks, real estate, mutual funds, or other investment assets. If no asset sales occurred during the year, select No and continue to the next section. For this demonstration, we'll select Yes to enter investment details. Enter the details of each investment sale individually. Start by selecting the type of property sold. In this example, we're entering a real estate transaction. Then complete the required fields, including a description of the property, how the property was acquired, the acquisition date, and the date sold. Next, enter the financial details related to the transaction, such as gross sales price, depreciated value if applicable, and the cost or other basis of the property. Tax990 will automatically calculate the gain or loss based on the information entered. If you have multiple investment sales to report, click Save and add another. Otherwise, click Save Investment to continue. After completing the investment income section, we'll move to information about officers, directors, trustees, foundation managers, employees, and contractors. This section is required to report individuals who held leadership or management responsibilities within the organization during the tax year. Click Start next to the appropriate subsection to begin. First, enter information for your organization's officers, directors, trustees, and foundation managers. You can choose to add entries individually or use the bulk upload option if you have a larger number of records to report. For this demonstration, we'll add the information individually by clicking Add the Details of List of Officers. Now enter the required details for the individual being reported. This includes name and title, address information, average hours worked per week, compensation paid, employee benefit contributions, and expense account allowances if applicable. If additional explanation is needed regarding compensation, select Yes to provide details. Once completed, click Add to save the entry. If you need to enter more individuals, click Add Another. Next, Tax990 asks whether the organization paid annual compensation of more than $50,000 to any employees. Select Yes if applicable and enter the employee details when prompted. Otherwise, select No and click Next to continue. You'll then answer a similar question for independent contractors. Next, we'll complete the Analysis of Revenue section for Form 990-PF. This section is used to report the organization's sources of income and investment revenue for the tax year. You'll see several revenue categories listed. Complete only the sections that apply to your organization. We'll begin with contributions, gifts, and grants received. Tax990 first asks whether the organization received contributions of $5,000 or more from any single contributor during the tax year. Select Yes if applicable. These contributions must generally be reported on Schedule B. You can then choose to add contributions individually or use the bulk upload option if you have multiple records to enter. When adding contributions individually, enter the contributor's details, including the name of the contributor, contributor type, address information, and the type of contribution received. You'll also indicate whether the contribution was made directly or through payroll deduction, if applicable. Once complete, click Add to save the entry. Use Add Another to continue entering additional contributions. Tax990 also allows you to report contributions that are less than $5,000 individually or as a combined total entry. You may add contributions one at a time, use bulk upload, or report multiple smaller contributions as a single summarized entry. Choose the method that best matches your organization's records. Once entered, click Add to save the contribution. Next, enter any interest income earned from savings accounts or temporary cash investments. Select Yes if the organization received this type of income during the year. Enter the name of the institution or source from which the interest was received, then provide revenue per books and the net investment income amount. If you have multiple entries, click Add Another. Otherwise, click Add to continue. You'll then report any dividends or interest received from securities. If the organization received dividend income during the tax year, select Yes and enter the required details. If not, select No and continue to the next section. Next is the Gross Rents section. If the organization earned rental income during the tax year, select Yes and provide the rental income details when prompted. If the organization did not receive rental income, select No and continue. The Net Gain or Loss from Sales of Assets section summarizes gains or losses from the sale of assets and investments previously entered in the Capital Gains or Losses section. Tax990 automatically carries over the totals, including gross sale price and net gain or loss amounts. You can review or edit these entries if needed before continuing. Next, report any gross profit from the sale of inventory items. Select Yes if the organization sold inventory during the tax year. Enter the inventory item name or description, then provide gross sales of inventory, less returns and allowances, and the cost of goods sold. Tax990 automatically calculates the resulting gross profit or loss. Use Add Another to continue entering inventory sales or click Add to save the record. Once all inventory sales information have been entered and reviewed, click Next to continue to the remaining sections of Form 990-PF. Next, we'll move to the Other Income section. This section allows you to report additional income categories that may not have been included earlier in the return. Complete only the sections that apply to the organization. Tax990 will first ask whether the organization received any program service revenue during the tax year. Select Yes if the organization earned income from activities related to its exempt purpose. Enter a description of the program service revenue. You may also enter a business code associated with the service activity if applicable. Tax990 provides helpful guidance and business code references within the form to help classify the revenue correctly. Then enter the amounts for revenue per books and net investment income. Click Add to save the entry. For this demonstration, only the program service revenue section was completed. However, organizations should carefully review each available category and determine whether additional revenue sources apply to their operations and reporting requirements. Properly evaluating all applicable income sections is important to ensure accurate reporting and overall IRS compliance. Next, we'll complete the Operating and Administrative Expenses section of Form 990-PF. This section is used to report the organization's operating expenses and charitable disbursements. Complete only the expense categories that apply to your organization. For this demonstration, only the travel, conferences, and meetings and printing and publication sections were completed. However, organizations should carefully review every expense category and determine which sections apply to their operations and financial activity. Accurately reporting all applicable expenses is important to ensure proper allocation, complete financial reporting, and overall IRS compliance. For travel, conferences, and meetings, first enter any expenses related to business travel, conferences, or meetings incurred during the tax year. Select Yes if the organization had qualifying travel or meeting expenses. Enter a description of the expense, then provide the amounts for expenses per books, net investment income, and disbursements for charitable purposes if applicable. Use Add Another to enter additional records or click Add to save the expense entry. Next is the Printing and Publication section. This section is used to report expenses related to printing newsletters, publications, reports, or other printed materials. Select Yes if the organization incurred these expenses during the tax year. Enter the expense description and provide the related amounts for expenses per books, net investment income, and disbursements for charitable purposes. Once complete, click Add to save the entry. Next, move to the Other Expenses section. This section is used to report additional expenses, such as special event expenses and other miscellaneous expenses not reported elsewhere in the return. Next, indicate whether the organization made any payments for contributions, gifts, or grants during the tax year. If no qualifying payments were made, select No and continue to the next section. Next, we'll complete the Net Assets and Balance Sheets section of Form 990-PF. This section is used to report the organization's financial position, including assets, liabilities, and fund balances at both the beginning and end of the tax year. Complete each applicable section carefully to ensure the balance sheet reconciles correctly. Begin by entering the organization's total net assets or fund balances at the beginning of the tax year. This amount is generally carried over from the prior year's ending balance. After entering the value, click Next to continue. Next, enter the organization's assets based on book value and fair market value. Tax990 maps this information directly to Part 2, Lines 1 through 16 of Form 990-PF. Enter the beginning of year book value, end of year book value, and end of year fair market value for each applicable asset category. Use the Add buttons to enter supporting details for receivables, investments, loans, and additional asset categories when applicable. Continue entering any remaining asset information, including investment holdings, mortgage loans, land and buildings, and other assets. Tax990 automatically totals the organization's assets at the bottom of the screen. Review all amounts carefully before proceeding. Next, enter the organization's liabilities for both the beginning and the end of the tax year. Use the Add Info links when additional liability details are required. Next, specify whether the organization follows SFAS 117, also known as ASC 958 Financial Accounting Standards. Select the appropriate option for the organization, then enter the balances for net assets without donor restrictions and net assets with donor restrictions. Provide both beginning of year and end of year values where applicable. Tax990 now displays the completed balance sheet summary, including assets, liabilities, and net assets of fund balances. The system also verifies whether the balance sheet balances correctly for both the beginning and end of the year. Green check marks indicate the totals match successfully. Next, complete the section for changes in net assets or fund balances. Indicate whether the organization had any increases or decreases in net assets or fund balances during the tax year. For this demonstration, No was selected for both questions. However, it's important to carefully review each compliance question and answer accurately based on the organization's financial activity. Tax990 now displays the analysis of net assets or fund balances. This section compares the organization's balance sheet totals with the entries reported throughout the return. The system automatically verifies whether the beginning of the year and the end of year balances reconcile successfully. Green indicators confirm that the reported balances match correctly. Next, proceed to the statement regarding activity section. This section contains several compliance-related questions regarding the organization's operations, filings, distributions, governing documents, and other activities during the tax year. Each item should be reviewed carefully to ensure accurate reporting and compliance with IRS requirements. As part of the statement regarding activities section, Tax990 may require additional supplemental information based on the organization's activities and filing requirements. The form asks whether the foundation had at least $5,000 in assets at any time during the tax year. For this demonstration, Yes was selected, and additional supplemental information sections were completed, including information regarding foundation managers, contribution, gift, loan, and scholarship information, and grants and contributions paid during the year or approved for future payment. Organizations should carefully review each disclosure and provide accurate information to ensure compliance with IRS reporting requirements. Next, select the states in which the foundation is registered or reports activities. Then indicate whether the organization furnished a copy of Form 990-PF to the Attorney General or designated official of each applicable state. Be sure to answer these compliance questions accurately based on the organization's filing obligations. Next, enter the details of the individual or business responsible for maintaining the organization's books and records. This information is required for Form 990-PF filings. Provide the name of the person or business, mailing address, city, state, and zip code, and a valid telephone number. Next, proceed to the Summary of Charitable Activities and Program-Related Investments section. This section includes summaries for direct charitable activities and program-related investments. These entries are mapped directly to Part 8A and Part 8B of Form 990-PF. Next, complete the minimum investment return section. This area includes fair market value of assets not used directly for charitable purposes, cash deemed held for charitable activities, and the minimum investment return summary. For this demonstration, many of the reported values were zero. Even when no amounts apply, it is important to carefully review each section to confirm the organization's reporting obligations are accurate and complete. Next, proceed to the qualifying distributions section. This section reports amounts paid to accomplish charitable purposes, amounts set aside for specific charitable projects, and the qualifying distribution summary. For this demonstration, several values were reported as zero. Always review each compliance question carefully to ensure the organization remains compliant with IRS private foundation filing requirements. Next, proceed to the excise tax based on investment income section. These entries are mapped directly to Part 6 of Form 990-PF. Tax990 automatically calculates the excise tax based on the organization's net investment income. In this example, the calculated tax is based on 1.39% of net investment income. Review the calculated amount carefully before proceeding. Next, enter any applicable credits and payments. For this demonstration, the total credits and payments reported were $0. Review the tax details of the foundation section. If applicable, enter any penalty for underpayment of estimated tax. The system also displays the total amount owed and important IRS payment guidance for domestic private foundations. Review all payment instructions carefully before proceeding. Next, select the preferred IRS payment option. Tax990 supports payment methods including electronic funds withdrawal, or EFW, and EFTPS, the Electronic Federal Tax Payment System. Be sure to review the payment instructions and confirm responsibility for submitting the tax payment to the IRS before continuing. Next, complete the distributable amount section. Review the minimum investment return and tax on investment income calculated by the system. Then complete the applicable fields for income tax for the tax year, recoveries of amounts treated as qualifying distributions, and deductions from distributable amount. For this demonstration, several values entered were $0. Even when no adjustments apply, it is important to review each required line carefully to ensure the organization's reporting is accurate. Next, proceed to the undistributed income section. This section includes undistributed income, excess distribution carryover, and the undistributed income summary. These entries are mapped directly to Part 8 of Form 990-PF. Next, complete the statement regarding activities for Form 4720 section. This section contains compliance-related questions regarding potential excise taxes under Sections 4941 through 4945, 170 F10, and 4965. The categories include self-dealing, excess business holdings, investments that jeopardize charitable purposes, taxable and political expenditures, and personal benefits or tax shelter transactions. For this demonstration, the compliance questions were answered no. However, it is important to carefully review every compliance question for accuracy and compliance before filing the return. Next, proceed to the analysis of income-producing activity section. This section reports the organization's various sources of income-producing activities and investments. Review and complete each applicable category. Review the detailed program service revenue entries with the analysis of income-producing activities section. Tax990 displays each program service revenue activity along with revenue per books, applicable unrelated business income codes, exclusion codes, and excluded amounts under Sections 512, 513, or 514, and related or exempt function income amounts. Since the reporting workflow is consistent across each activity type, this demonstration will not walk through every individual category separately. Organizations should carefully review all applicable income-producing activities and complete each section as needed to ensure accurate reporting and IRS compliance. Next, complete the business officer details and signing officer details section. Enter the business officer's name, title, phone number, and email address, then enter the signing authority information, including first and last name, signature title, and optional Social Security number for e-sign purposes. Tax990 securely stores the Social Security number for e-signature authorization and does not map it to the final PDF return. Review the preparer details displayed at the bottom of the page and indicate whether the IRS may discuss the return with the preparer before continuing. Tax990 now displays the return summary page. Review all organization and filing details carefully before proceeding to error check. If changes are needed, select the corresponding edit button to update the information before continuing. Next, Tax990 performs an automated error check review of the return. The system checks all major filing sections for missing information, inconsistencies, and potential issues. Warnings and errors, if any, are displayed for review. Carefully review all warnings and resolve any applicable issues before proceeding with filing. Next, you have the option to share the return for review and approval. Enter the reviewer's contact name and email address to send a secure review invitation. Reviewers can view the return through a secure portal, approve the return, and leave comments if revisions are needed. For this demonstration, the review request step was skipped. Next, complete the Form 8453-TE e-file signature authorization process. Tax990 provides options to send an e-sign request to the client or sign and upload the completed authorization form manually. The system also tracks the signature request status and notifies you once the form has been electronically signed. Review the generated Form 8453-TE carefully. The form includes a declaration of the officer or person subject to tax, along with the electronic return originator and pay preparer information. Verify all organization information, signatures, dates, and preparer details before continuing with the e-sign process. Next, review the service fee summary. Tax990 displays the filing fee along with included services such as free amendments, retransmission support for rejected returns, and Protection Plus coverage. Optional services such as text alerts and fax alerts may also be selected if needed. Review the order summary and available credits before proceeding. Finally, review the transmit to the IRS page. Carefully verify all organization details, filing information, return totals, and signing authority information displayed on the screen. The order summary and applied credits are also shown for final review. Once all information has been confirmed, select Complete Your Payment and transmit to the IRS to electronically file Form 990-PF with the IRS. And that's how easy it is to prepare, review, and electronically file Form 990-PF using Tax990. From entering financial information and compliance details to completing e-signatures and transmitting the return to the IRS, Tax990 streamlines the entire filing process for private foundations. To get started with your Form 990-PF filing today, visit tax990.com and experience a faster, simpler way to stay compliant with IRS requirements.